Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Grayzone. It is the second anniversary of Tufan al-Aqsa, the Al-Aqsa Flood, and I'm here with Aaron Mate. 2 years of continuous genocide and constant live streaming about it, and here we are. I think it's a day to discuss the past 2 years, to put the past 2 years in context, but also to understand where we are, which is at the beginning of an officially announced eighth front of Israel's borderless war for control and the survival of its apartheid system inside the United States, a war inside the United States on the American mind, a war on us. Anyway, Aaron, good to see you again. The last time we saw each other, we were actually in person in New York, and we were talking about a lot of these same issues, but today it takes on, I think, more sort of, it takes on a sharper focus. What do you think the legacy of Al-Aqsa Flood, October 7th, is, as we are basically being flooded with Clockwork Orange style, eyelids forced open propaganda by Netanyahu and Israel's proxies in the U.S. about that day? How do you look at it 2 years later?
That's a tough question. I guess if I could think of a few bullet points, the legacy,
kind of a surprise question today.
Yeah, the legacy sort of enforced Jewish supremacy as the dominant norm. You know, Jewish supremacy of genocide to preserve the ethno-supremacist state of Israel, and Jewish supremacy here at home in the U.S., where wealthy billionaires could decide who would head colleges, who will staff media positions, whether people will have free speech, what kind of content we'll be allowed to see. Everywhere has been the sort of the enforcement of Israel's prerogatives, which are synonymous with Jewish supremacy. And I say this, you know, being Jewish myself and discuss that. It's not, you know, the supremacy of Jews like us, but it's the supremacy of a certain supremacist mindset that sees Jews as superior and Palestinians as not equal human beings, and genocide is okay, and it's in fact justified to preserve it in Gaza, which is now completely in ruins. That's what I'm thinking about.
Well, this supremacist class of American Jews is being threatened right now. They are losing control over the public and over the public mind, and they're using their influence within an oligarchic system where, as a Princeton University study from, I believe, 2011 showed that something like 90% of the American public who are not extremely wealthy have almost no decision-making power over politics. They are asserting their influence as the 1% to just not to necessarily popularize their narrative, but to just shut down the reality that everyone sees. That's the third part of what I see as sort of three components to the world after October 7th. There was the October 7th attack, which demonstrated abundantly that Israel is not invincible. Israel is not omnipotent. Israeli intelligence is not infallible. That Israel can be set on its back foot militarily by besieged refugees who had organized for years and years for this attack, who were being organized by someone who operated for 25 years within Israeli prisons, Yahya Sinwar, and before that specialized in rooting out and killing Israeli collaborators inside Gaza society. So was kind of an intelligence agent himself who understood the Israeli mindset and the Hebrew language. And I was not shocked that the volcano exploded on October 7th, having had two sort of tours inside Gaza, journalistic tours, and done as much as I could to try to understand the resistance there, but also spent time on the Israeli side of the Gaza envelope as it's understood there. And I was not actually shocked by this attack. Nor was I shocked that Israel enacted a mass Hannibal directive that wound up killing hundreds, possibly, of Israeli citizens who had been taken captive or were simply on the ground. And we have abundant new evidence from Israeli Apache pilots themselves. I mean, I reported on this in October 2023 and was attacked harshly by Haaretz. And now here's Haaretz reviewing a book. Was I about to fire on our soldiers or on the terrorists? Israeli pilots admit October 7th failures in a new book. This is only in Hebrew. And the book is called The Tanks. No, there's one book called The Tanks Are Here, but there's another book called War Machine, The Face Behind the Helmet, Attack Helicopter Pilots Tell Their Stories. And here's a quote from one of them. I didn't know how many had crossed the border or whether the figures I saw in the fields and at the junctions were terrorists or our own soldiers. Every target I marked was shadowed by doubt, and each time I squeezed the trigger, I wondered whether I was about to fire on our own soldiers or on the terrorists. The word civilian appears 28 times in this book, but it refers only to Israelis. The word children appears often, but always in the context of the pilots' own families. The pilots are genocidal maniacs. It doesn't refer to any of the 276 Palestinian civilians and close to 700 wounded in basically 1 hour in the Nuseirat refugee camp in Operation Arnon, when Israeli Apache pilots participated in this hostage rescue operation to get Noam Argamani and like 3 other captives. One of the most disgusting massacres of the war, completely left out. So there was October 7th. The lies about October 7th were then spun into the PR war to get us to forget about Israel's failure, because Israel needs to be seen as a military asset to the US, and to manufacture consent for genocide. And so I produced a year ago with Ahmed Hussam of Propaganda & Co. and Sut Jali, who's a professor of media studies at University of Massachusetts, Atrocity Incorporated. And this is the intro just to remind everyone of the kind of the blitzkrieg of propaganda we were treated to after October 7th, which was largely successful. And we're going to get later in this show into the propaganda blitzkrieg that's coming today in what I think is a vain and desperate attempt to retrench Israeli psychological control over the American public. PR machine went into overdrive. Its propaganda blitz was predictable, and its objective was clear: shock the Western public into supporting Israel's plan to carry out the wholesale destruction of the besieged Gaza Strip. In its campaign to manufacture consent for mass death, the Israeli government found no greater ally than the unquestioning marionettes that serve as the faces and voices of U.S. mainstream media.
At least 40 babies were killed. Some of them, their heads cut off. He said he's never seen acts of brutality like this.
They cut head of children.
Mothers and children, and yes, they cut off heads. They cut off heads.
Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated.
Stomach turning reports of babies being killed.
Babies and adults decapitated, babies and adults burnt to death.
Behead babies, burn women, literally decimate them.
Dozens of children bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
A boy and girl, 6 and 8 years old, and their parents. The father, his eye gouged out in front of his kids. The mother's breast cut off. The girl's foot amputated. The boy's fingers cut off before they were executed.
She was pregnant woman. Stomach is butchered up, and a knife is still stacked in that baby.
Little kids were beheaded. We didn't know which head belongs to which kid. Bastards put these babies in an oven and put on the oven.
They
baked their baby in the oven and kept the woman alive so that she could hear the screams of her child melting.
The little children that were put in the oven.
Women sexually assaulted and brutally killed.
ילדים, תינוקות שנתלו על חבל כביסה ממש בשורה אחת. Pregnant women, cut open. Guys, the things they're having are so sick. פצח אותם, אנס אותם. הרגליים שלהם היו פתוחות. הוא הפשיט אותם משהו.
That, by the way, is Rami Davidian, who, since we published Atrocity Incorporated, this film has been exposed as a massive fraud and grifter who made literally everything up and made millions of dollars in speaking fees.
חותך לתש"ת וזורק את זה על הכביש, הם משחקים עם זה.
These depraved savages raped women, murdered children, and executed entire families, burning some of them alive.
Sheer evil.
They are savages. Hamas is ISIS.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
So that film it's up on my Twitter page right now. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on YouTube. It is heavily censored now. You have to go through a censorship wall on Twitter X to see it. And what it shows you is all the lies that were spun out. Everything you heard there was a complete lie about October 7th. We can talk about the truth, but Aaron, those lies persist today.
Well, they do. And what I'm thinking about when I see those clips, and by the way, that's such an important film that you guys made. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I think it's a must watch. I'm thinking about not just the censorship of the facts and the distortion of the facts in the corporate media, but across all media and alternative media as well. Why is it that, you and Alia Benima and only a few others, ASO and Stanley, were willing to report from the get-go that Israel killed at least some of its own people on October 7th? I remember when you guys did that, there was just like a gust of silence everywhere else. Nobody else wanted to touch it. The same thing with the rape hoax. When we came out against that, along with Ali Abanim and a few others, again, nobody was willing to join us. And I'm not trying to shame anybody here. I'm actually trying to think through how is it that how is it that this happens when even those of us who are against genocide, whose job is to be independent journalists, why is there still so much widespread conformity or at least silence to Israeli propaganda, to Israeli U.S. state propaganda? It just speaks to how powerful our propaganda system is, that people, without being told anything, without being told what to say, without being told that these are the red lines, a narrative atrocity propaganda like this Atrocity Inc. film debunks, it just builds up and people just intuit that they're just not going to go there. And it's amazing that it took so long for people to finally come around to talking about some of the truth about October 7th that was distorted and concealed from the start. But the rape hoax, that persisted for a very long time. A lot of progressive media people rushed to embrace it. People who oppose the genocide still embrace the propaganda used to sustain it. And I just think that's a fascinating window into how our propaganda system works. And even today, people who I appreciate their efforts. Bernie Sanders, there's a lot to criticize, but he does do some positive things on this issue. He still embraces the fake claim about Hamas killing 1,100 innocent people on October 7th. Zoran Mamdani just came out with a statement saying that Hamas killed 1,100 people on October 7th. And putting aside the political framing of that, sort of negating the fact that October 7th was an act of resistance against a brutal military occupation, even just factually on the numbers, it's not true that Hamas killed all the victims of October 7th. We know that Israel killed at least some of those victims by the Hannibal Directive. Why can someone like Zoran Mamdani not acknowledge that 2 years later?
Well, he's a politician. And I honestly am not surprised by any of Zoran's statements. All we need to hear from him on this issue is he will enforce the ICC warrant on Netanyahu, and he will divest from Israeli bonds, which New York City forces its employees to buy through their pensions. And Brad Lander, who called Israel's assault on Gaza a genocide at Yom Kippur services this year, wearing a talit, refuses to divest from Israeli bonds. So I don't really care about the rhetoric. If he actually puts his money where his mouth is, that's good enough for me. I totally expected him to like dial back the rhetoric, and that's just what you get from a democratic socialist politician. Bernie, has voted for appropriations and arms packages to Israel. He had opposed a ceasefire initially, and that's the real problem, is the actions. And then, when you talk about rhetoric still persisting about these lies, part of it is that in mainstream American politics, independent media is anathema, but increasingly we're having more influence. On the right, the alt media has dominated the narrative, and the way that politicians fake former Goldman Sachs bankers like Ted Cruz, Tel Aviv Ted, will cater to alternative right-wing narratives on many issues like COVID. Of course, they won't touch this one, but the Democratic Party is still controlled by Obama laboratory reproductions like Pete Buttigieg, who parroted all of the October 7th lies.
Those
recently.
unspeakable horrors are something that was unleashed by a war that started with unspeakable horrors being perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th.
Well, I mean, that wasn't the beginning of the conflict.
Of course. I mean, this goes back to 47.
Why do podcasters, is that like some podcast look where you just put on a silly hat to look alternative? This is like how Netanyahu speaks to the biggest goofballs, and it looks like you're edgy.
And it goes back before 47. But this is exactly my point. Right. The moment you say anything about, the moment I talk about disgust at babies being put in ovens and people being flayed by Hamas on October 7th, somebody says, well, you're not talking about the history of the Nakba and what happened with the displacement.
Well, no, the actual retort to that is you're not telling the truth. It's not that you're talking about the Nakba. It's that you're not telling the truth, because there were no babies put in ovens. And the fact that Pete Buttigieg still feels compelled to cater to that narrative, it speaks to how just unbelievably powerful Israeli propaganda is in our society. I mean, we have just a class of brainwashed, servile politicians and pundits willing to repeat these lies that justify genocide, even if they claim to have some misgivings or some discomfort with the genocide, which they have to now give some words to. But otherwise, the narrative obedience, it's really it's incredible how powerful it is even 2 years later.
So 2 years later, that actually hurts Pete Buttigieg, whereas it was mandatory. It was the prerequisite to speak as a politician in the weeks and months after October 7th, because that's when propaganda does its damage. And then by the time it's all corrected, at least in our little corner of the internet, the damage has already been done and it's too late. Pete Buttigieg hasn't caught up yet, and that's going to harm him. He is discredited by those kinds of comments about babies burned in ovens. But that speaks to the third component of the world after October 7th. The second component, which we haven't discussed, we did the first one, which is sort of the attack and the propaganda the day after. The second component is military, the conflict between Israel and Palestinian resistance in Gaza, the negotiations over captives, Palestinian captives held in Israeli jails and Jewish Israeli captives held in Gaza, and Israel's seven-front war, which continues to escalate. Israel claimed success against Hezbollah, killed its leader, Hassan Nasrallah. It launched an unprovoked assault on Iran in a 12-day war in which it was rescued by the U.S. It has failed to suppress ballistic missile fire from Yemen, even though it slaughtered Yemen's prime minister and entire cabinet, and continues to attack civilian targets in Yemen. It attacked inside Qatar to kill Hamas's entire negotiating team, failed in that regard, actually had to apologize to Qatar via Trump, who is basically taking loads of money from Qatar. It is attacking inside Syria constantly. It sees Turkey as a eventual enemy. It is moving towards confrontation with Egypt, which refuses to open up the Rafah crossing to allow the completion of the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And it's still fighting in Gaza. Today, 3 Israeli reservists were badly wounded, 2 possibly killed by a grenade. they've failed to extricate Hamas from Gaza, even as they're putting into place this Tony Blair Gaza International Transitional Authority / remake of the Iraq Provisional Authority neo-colonial plan. There is no day after in Gaza yet. This is so Israel has, while it has made military gains and it has demonstrated some flashy terrorist tactics, various assassinations, it's shown that it can assassinate at will. Its pager attack. It has not succeeded militarily. And then there's the third component, the public relations war, the propaganda war, where it has solidly been resoundingly defeated. And the defeat just continues to play out day after day as support for Israel in the West, and particularly in the US, is collapsing. And I would just say, on a personal note, if October 7th had not happened and Gaza had continued to mire under siege and allowed this, and the siege had been normalized as Netanyahu planned, using Qatari intermediaries to basically pay off Hamas and try to transform them, domesticate them into another form of more like Islamic version of the Palestinian Authority. If that had not happened, I don't believe I or many other people who had focused on this issue for 15 years would be engaged in it with so much intensity. That doesn't mean that any civilian death is justified in order to wake up the world, but that's just the objective reality. Is this completely reignited the cause of Palestine, and there is now a global rebellion against Zionism and against the transatlantic establishment that is protecting it and facilitating this genocide. And that will just not end. It upended history. And I mean, remember before October 7th, Aaron, what our live streams were focused on. I mean, we would cover Palestine when we could, but it wasn't the same reality. We're living in a completely different world.
Yeah, the last major Israeli assault on Gaza that we covered was in May 2021, and then things got, I don't want to say quiet, but certainly the issue, the cause was relatively, it seemed as if the Palestinians had just been defeated, had been permanently pacified, certainly in the occupied West Bank, and then Hamas changed everything with October 7th. And we should say a few words now about the talks that are going on in Egypt, indirectly between Israel and Hamas. I mean, the main sticking point for Hamas is they want a guarantee of a full Israeli withdrawal, which Israel so far is refusing to do. And here's Trump being asked at the Oval Office whether, if there is a final deal, whether he can guarantee that Israel will not resume the genocide in Gaza.
Guarantees are you giving your Arab partners that Israel will not resume its offensive after the hostages are released?
Well, the primary guarantee is once this deal happens, if it does happen, look, they're in negotiations right now, we are everything possible. We have a lot of power, and we're going to do everything possible to make sure everybody adheres to the deal. Okay?
So he's not willing to give a guarantee there that if there is a final deal, that he will prevent Israel from attacking Gaza again. Because if you read the deal, Israel insists on the right to continue attacking Gaza at will. And so far, he has Trump's endorsement. And why wouldn't he, given that, who are the main forces behind this so-called deal? It's Steve Witkoff, who gushed about being applauded by a former Mossad chief. Jared Kushner, who's supposed to be out of government, but he's back in. He's actually going to Egypt to take part in these talks. And of course, the plan is largely inspired by Tony Blair, who is the former British Prime Minister who helped lie us into the war in Iraq and has been trying to push some version of this dystopian future for Gaza for a very long time, where the people are ruled over by a collaborator force. And that was supposed to be previously the Palestinian Authority, but now the plan is to basically bring in, allied Arab states for the job. And that's the deal that Trump is pushing. So, and I don't know, I'm not going to make predictions. I think Hamas is in a really tough position it's very hard for them to, overlook the fact that the people of Gaza are just suffering in unspeakable ways, and there's pressure on them to accept Trump's ultimatum. But if Israel won't budge at all, and I don't see any indication that they will unless Trump forces them to, then how can they accept a deal that would preserve Israel's self-declared right to continue the genocide and to establish a permanent military occupation inside of Gaza?
Yeah, here's the cautious optimism about chances of reaching a deal. When I see Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff involved, I don't believe any deal is going to be reached, because it just means they're advancing. They're Israel's lawyer. They're Netanyahu's lawyers. They're advancing his attempts to move the goalposts. Trump cannot exercise any leverage. He called for stopping the bombing of Gaza, 6 days ago? Every day since then, at least 60 people have been killed.
Yep.
Hundreds wounded. Gaza City was bombed today. The Israeli destruction of Gaza City is continuing apace. And the plan is to ethnically cleanse the north, force them south, and ultimately force Egypt to take them in. So I predicted from the beginning that this plan would, at the very least, lead to a war between wars. That's Israel's strategy, which was at least officially conceived under the watch of, I believe it was Benny Gantz when he was defense minister. And it's that when you have a ceasefire, you continue to attack and you continue to assassinate and you continue to wage wars the same way that Israel's waging war on Syria right now, which is basically laid down and died before the Israeli occupation forces, where they're bombing any target that they think is militarily significant, and in southern Lebanon, where Israel's violated the ceasefire thousands of times. That's the reality they want to get to in Gaza, where there's a ceasefire. Hamas has basically agreed to some form of disarmament. There's a new technocratic authority, and Israel can continue to attack. And that's a red line for Hamas. They understand what's coming next. And they also look at the West Bank. Where's the West Bank today? The Palestinian Authority collaborates with Israel on security coordination. They help arrest Palestinians involved in resistance activities. And they're still surrounded with checkpoints. New checkpoints went up around Ramallah yesterday. There are checkpoints blocking all of the cities from residents from Area A in the West Bank from traveling from city to city. The West Bank is effectively being annexed, and they agreed to all of Israel's terms. So why should Hamas put down its weapons? Why should it agree to this pacification deal? The only reason is because the suffering has become so intense, and because they will get some of their terms in exchange for captives, something we never talk about in the West, not just Western media, but Western society. Palestinian hostages, hundreds and hundreds of people with life sentences. Marwan Barghouti, one of the most popular figures in Palestinian politics, is languishing in a torture dungeon. They want to get these people out, and they may be able to do it through this deal.
Well, I'll be shocked if Israel actually releases Marwan Barghouti, precisely because they know he's one of the few popular leaders who could unite the Palestinian people. And Israeli strategy is predicated on keeping Palestinians divided, not just geographically, but politically as well. And that's why they've kept Marwan Barghouti in prison for more than 2 decades. That's why Ben Gvir recently released a video of him going to visit Marwan Barghouti, who looked very gaunt, under torture for years in Israeli prison, and taunting him.
Because he knew his name was being considered. That's why he did that.
Yeah. And look, the fact that Israel and Trump don't even see the Palestinian Authority as yet a suitable partner for their technocratic rule in Gaza, despite the fact that, as you pointed out, the Palestinian Authority is a collaborator through and through. It speaks to the utter racist contempt these people have for Palestinians, that even a collaborator in their eyes isn't compliant enough, because the Palestinian Authority still occasionally does things like going to the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice, or vying for statehood at the UN in a completely symbolic gesture, which is why Trump recently banned the Palestinian Authority president, Mahmoud Abbas, from going to New York. And still, Abbas and the PA play along with Israel and the US in the hope of getting whatever crumbs they can get. But the Israeli mindset is so colonial that even a collaborator isn't servile enough for them, which is why they're not ready to give them the keys to their dystopia in Gaza as of yet. And if you go back to Trump's peace plan of 2020, which was authored by Jared Kushner, the demands on the Palestinian Authority is basically you can do nothing without the consent of Israel. If you want to join an international institution, you can only do it with Israel's consent. You have to drop all legal challenges to Israel, which basically means you have to drop all efforts to assert minimal Palestinian rights in international forums. So that's the Trump plan basically for Gaza, is just complete surrender to the point where even a collaborator like Abbas and the Palestinian Authority, even they are not servile enough to the U.S.-Israeli agenda.
And it's also to prevent a plan from going through. The plan cannot be initiated and implemented with Netanyahu surviving at the top of this fanatical messianic coalition. And then there's a larger issue that October 7th and everything that's happened since then has illustrated for us. Israel cannot exist at peace. It can't be at peace because then it loses its value as a supposed strategic asset to the United States. If it just decides not to be an attack dog, what purpose does it serve? How does it test all of the weapons that it markets as field tested? How does it develop new technology? Its entire R&D sector, which has infested every tech company in the United States, every major tech company, and which relies on massive, massive infusions of direct foreign investment from mostly Jewish American billionaires, comes through Unit 8200 in the Israeli army, which relies on occupation. Israel cannot ever end its occupation, and it cannot end these wars that it's in, including the war, the psychological war on us. So this is a permanent reality. It is a permanent war for as long as Zionism exists, which is why we're not, there's no discussion about a two-state solution anymore. There's no realistic discussion about a consolidation of Jewish supremacist political power over a portion of the land of historic Palestine. It's basically a discussion from both sides, all or nothing. And if Israel achieves its all or nothing objective of consolidating its apartheid system and its control over our own societies, it will be in a permanent, constant state of ever-expanding war. And something we are not talking about now, very few people are talking about, is that Israel is expanding its Dimona nuclear facility right under the nose of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is not able to regulate it because Israel doesn't participate in the NPT. They have a effectively secret nuclear program that we all know exists. It's strategic ambiguity. It's expanding it. Why? Because it's planning for a Samson option. Because it knows that if it at one point loses several arms shipments from the US, doesn't get the THAAD missile systems in place, and Iran attacks, it's toast. And then it's time for the Samson option. That's the danger that this psychotic and satanic state poses to the whole of humanity. And I don't want to be living the rest of my life in this reality, but that's where we are. And we have to understand it with clear eyes at this point, 2 years after October 7th.
Yeah, and we can't forget the war on Iran, the Israeli-U.S. attack on Iran. That was most likely a first round. Netanyahu is still beating the drums of war for another attack on Iran. Here he is just a few days ago.
It's developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000 kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers, and they've got under their atomic guns, in New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America.
Yeah, so this is just the Condoleezza Rice, we don't want the first shot to come in the form of a mushroom cloud from Iraq WMD playbook that Netanyahu is pushing. And again, he wants to go after Iran because Iran is the main deterrent to his aggression in the region. That's why he's obsessed with destroying. Like he talks about, people in Iran chanting death to America. Well, his policies are death to the Iranian government. That's what he is. His whole government apparatus is devoted to pursuing. That's why he assassinates scientists inside Iran. That's why his U.S. allies impose murderous sanctions on Iran that really hurt the economy and its people. That's what his project is organized around, and he hasn't forgotten about that plan. And Trump was on board with him the first round, and the way things are going with Trump, it's very plausible to believe that Trump's on board with him for a second round.
He would have to be, otherwise Israel cannot initiate an attack on Iran, as we saw in the first round, as transcripts from Israel's military command demonstrated. They knew Trump was going to attack at some point and basically rescue them from the consequences of a war they started but couldn't finish. But those comments from Netanyahu, once again, are projection. Every accusation is a confession. Israel has Jericho missiles capable of possibly reaching Mar-a-Lago with a nuclear warhead. Only Israel has that. Iran doesn't have nuclear warheads with intercontinental ballistic missiles. And it's never demonstrated any interest in doing anything like that. But there is a Samson option that has been put on the table since the early 1970s. This is Israel's plan to rescue itself from this hallucinatory, fanatical vision that Netanyahu holds at the center of his identity, that he is attempting to prevent a second Holocaust of Jews by waging this endless war, and nuclear power will prevent it. So it's projection. Now, I mentioned these kind of three components of the world after October 7th, the attack and the propaganda the day after, the military component, and the PR war, and the defeat that Israel has suffered in the PR war because of its genocide in Gaza. It's just too much for decent people to stomach. The polls that we've been seeing since September are really incredible. And it looks like a total reversal in the way that Americans view Israel. And I see this in my daily life. I mean, I just feel it out there. It's like how I could feel just traveling around the country, interacting with people in 2024, that Trump was going to win. I feel like Israel is never going to be able to recover its support among the American public and is going to be a complete pariah state within 5 years, if not sooner. This is a Siena New York Times poll showing support that for Israel has plummeted. The poll declared that support for Israel in the U.S. has gone off a cliff. 1,300 registered voters responded. 35% expressed sympathy for the Palestinian side, while 34% said they support Israel. 31% said they were unsure or had equal sympathy because, I don't know, maybe you have a political IQ lower than a toaster oven. I don't know why. You just have no opinion. You're just not paying attention, or you just want to be a nice person. But this is something we've never seen before. This is such a credible poll in American politics, where Israel has always enjoyed a wide margin of support over Palestinians. Going back to a 2011 Gallup poll, which found that U.S. adults were more than 4 times as likely to express sympathy and support for Israelis than for Palestinians. And look at the way they frame the poll. I mean, it's a bogus framing. Who do you support more, Israelis or Palestinians? That's not the way the poll should be framed. And so we have another poll that I think was framed very effectively by a group that is supportive of Palestinians, that exists to promote PR, that supports the Palestine Solidarity Movement, but it's a credible poll. The way that it's a YouGov poll, so YouGov isn't going to carry out like a fake poll. You just pay YouGov to ask certain questions, and the framing of these questions is much more sophisticated, and it shows a supermajority of Democrats now support sanctions against Israel, the same ones that brought down apartheid in South Africa. If you look at polls like this, the Siena poll, go into the internals on young Democrats, young Democratic registered voters who are very progressive, support for Israel is in single digits. It's completely cratered, which means they're not going to regain that support when those young people are like 40 years old or 50 years old. But this is incredible. 76% of registered Democrats support a ban on Israeli bonds. Why are employees of public municipalities, public employees in the United States forced to invest in Israel? This is a complete violation of their freedom of association. I think it's unconstitutional, but so many municipalities own Israeli bonds. I think 15% of the bonds in Palm Beach are invested in Israeli bonds, and Israeli bonds have been downgraded since October 7th at least 2 times. They get like a B rating from Standard & Poor's. 75% support restricting Israeli imports of Israeli-made weapons. I mean, that's a no-brainer. 62% support prohibiting entry into the U.S. for Israeli government officials and soldiers. And Zohran Mamdani, I believe, the New York mayoral frontrunner, has reiterated his support for arresting Netanyahu under the ICC warrant. So the day is coming, and the Democratic Party won't listen to them, will they?
No, they won't, because the leadership is still people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, who, Hakeem Jeffries won't even endorse Zohran Mamdani, precisely because Mamdani represents the base in being critical of Israel and opposing genocide. And as you said, Mamdani has advocated arresting Netanyahu and forcing the ICC warrant if he comes to New York. And think about like this too in a media context. A poll showing Americans turning away from Israel is reflexively proof that they're also turning away from the corporate media, because the corporate media has been trying to enlist people constantly in supporting Israel for generations now, and ever since October 7th as well. All the laundering of Israeli propaganda across the political spectrum, from Fox News to CNN to the New York Times. So the fact that you have such widespread popular discontent, it also shows that the media is not doing its traditional job of indoctrinating people. The people are turning away. It's just more proof that people are turning away from these, a traditional so-called credible sources of news, which is to me is a doubly positive aspect of these polls, along with the turning away from Israel.
Yeah, it's happening among younger Jews, as we've talked about. I mean, we're not gigantic outliers here. This is Ali Abunimah citing a Washington Post poll. Almost 2/3 of American Jews say that Israel, which falsely claims to represent all Jews, is committing war crimes in Gaza. 4 in 10 American Jews call it a genocide. Here's the Washington Post headline. Many American Jews sharply disapprove of Israel's conduct of the war in Gaza, with 61% saying Israel has committed war crimes and about 4 in 10 saying the country is guilty of genocide against the Palestinians, according to a Washington Post poll. Are we really, do you feel like we're just complete outliers here, Aaron?
Well, no, of course not. But it's amazing though that the dominant trend now among the base still hasn't reached the leadership of the Democratic Party.
Or the leadership of the Jewish world, or the Jewish communal leadership.
Well, I think they're a lost cause, but I mean
they are a lost cause, but it's important to draw that distinction.
Oh, of course. But at least with Democrats, like, you think politically at this point, I mean, just even if they have no sense of morals, they don't care about like human life, but just politically, like, look at Kamala Harris. You can make the strong case that she lost the election because she wouldn't distance herself even an inch from Biden on Gaza, even though she had every opportunity to. But she wouldn't do it. Like, why? When politically there must have been some at least discussion internally about, like, this could cost us the election. We need Michigan to win, where there's a large Arab and Muslim population. The young people are not turning out for us because of our support for Israel's genocide. But yet Kamala Harris wouldn't do it. Hakeem Jeffries won't do it. Chuck Schumer won't do it. And just looking at this politically, when you have the Republican Party making it synonymous with Israel, I mean, the extremism of the Trump administration, Mike Huckabee, their Israel ambassador, like that's the Israel First Party now. So why, if you're a politically, like a remotely politically savvy Democrat, are you still even trying to, outcompete the Republicans when it comes to being Israel first? But that's how beholden these people are to the Israel lobby, to pro-Israel billionaires, that they're still trying to cling on to this apartheid state. And it's money, and I guess the experience of Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, where they got defeated by AIPAC spending, $20 million or so to defeat Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. I think that probably still resonates with a lot of people, especially in Congress.
Yeah, it's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins. It's also, I believe, about the fear of assassination or just personal destruction that public figures would face. There's a fear factor. But in Congress, it's all about the money, and they create you before you even are known to the public. That's one thing AIPAC does when they find out you're running, when they find out you're elected to a presidency of a historically black college, for example. You get a call from AIPAC and they offer to send you to Washington to their conference. I mean, they're on top of you before a single vote has even been tabulated, before your campaign even starts. That's how they got Marco Rubio. That's how they got the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. That's how they got Mike Waltz and so many other figures who are in national security positions in the Trump administration, as AIPAC's new CEO, Elliot Brand, said in leaked comments that I published at the Grayzone. That's how it works. So this needs to be challenged from the ground level, from the grassroots, at the city council level, at the school board level. And it will fall on fertile soil. It will fall on fertile soil among the Democrats, and a clash is coming within the GOP. I mean, but specifically within the Jewish world, I mean, change is happening, but too many Jews who understand that this is a genocide are afraid to identify as anti-Zionist or do anything material to, for example, go up in their own synagogues and demand that the Israeli flag be removed from the stage, from next to the bima, to actually make a stand, because the pressure is so extreme and because the entire Jewish communal world in the United States is controlled by Zionist fanatics who are basically sort of religious representatives of the donor class that controls Congress. So it's sort of like an occupation or a Jewish kind of captivity in the United States. And one figure in American politics who's Jewish, who's sort of prominent, he's been a major force behind Zohran Mamdani, who spoke out about this, but somewhat hypocritically, I believe this is at Yom Kippur services in New York, is Brad Lander, city comptroller, former council member, big player in New York politics.
And do we have the video?
Oh,
here
sorry.
it is. Okay, here it is.
I thought I was sharing it. Am I sharing it? Is it on?
Now you are.
Okay.
Yeah, go over. Yeah.
I think there's a little lag there. This is during Yizkor services on Yom Kippur. This is like the final or close to the final part of the service on the Day of Atonement, the Jewish Day of Atonement, when Jews atone for their sins, their personal sins, and so on. And rarely do you see atonement for the sins of Zionism. And so what that kind of makes his remarks more remarkable. And in Yizkor is also the observance of the dead, where you say the Kaddish, the prayer for the dead.
For the sin we have committed by waging a war of revenge. For the sin we have committed by failing to redeem captives. For the sin we have committed by not doing enough to dissent from the genocide of Palestinians that the Israeli government is perpetrating in our name.
So it sounds remarkable in a way. And I want to thank our friend, the great Jewish anti-Zionist Rob Bryan, for bringing that to my attention. Former contributor to the Grayzone, now a city employee who is forced to pay into Israeli bonds, to invest in Israeli bonds through his pension.
Disgusting.
And what Rob said to me is, while it seems welcome what Brad Lander is saying, he needs to stop with this Oscar Schindler act of, I could have done so much more, I wish I could have done more, and actually divest from Israeli bonds. Because as we can see in the New York Daily News, he has sidestepped the issue of Israel divestment, not once, but twice, and refuses to say whether the New York City should divest from Israeli bonds, which could happen under Zoran Mamdani, who Brad Lander has prominently endorsed. So this is like the issue. Are you a Zionist or are you an anti-Zionist?
Well, exactly.
About rhetoric,
yeah,
about genocide, but even liberal Zionists in Israel are calling it a genocide.
Yeah, and that's what that years and years of liberal Zionist indoctrination will do. That it will put limits on your humanity. It will sort of cap your humanity at a certain level. So even if you can recognize now after 2 years that it's a genocide, and that's better late than never, in terms of actually taking concrete action, that's where that tribalism, that groupthink comes in, where you're subconsciously associating, divestment, well, that would be betraying my people somehow or something like that. That's how that psychology works, and how it still traps people in Zionism, in enabling the genocide that they claim to oppose. And maybe I'm nitpicking too much, but even him calling this a war of revenge, it's not a war of revenge. It's a war of extermination. It's a war to fulfill a long-standing Israeli goal of ethnic cleansing, which begins with the founding of Israel itself. And there are people still not willing to reckon with that because of the emotional attachment they have to Israel and the Zionist culture that they grew up in North America.
That's what it is. Yeah, it's a refusal to reckon with it. I went to Yiskor services I just popped into a synagogue in Washington, D.C. On Yom Kippur. And the sermon was all about ICE being fascist. They weren't reckoning with it. And they were not cheering for Israel. There was no visible sign of support for Israel. No, wearing of yellow ribbons, none of that. It was just a refusal to reckon with the horrific reality of Zionism, and a diversion to a more popular liberal cause that, like, the Democratic Party is campaigning on. For me, it was like, here's a chance to take the temperature, and also, say the mourner's prayer. And the temperature is sort of lukewarm. And what it's going to take is an effort to get out of Zionist captivity in the U.S. It's still happening in the wilderness, even though we might not be so isolated in terms of Jewish opinion. The mobilization is not taking place within Jewish communal life at all. It's sort of being avoided still. And the consequences are going to be severe. According to Benjamin Netanyahu, do we have this teed up? Everyone hates Israel for no reason.
Oh, yeah. Let me get that one.
I got it. No one, there's no, it's not the dead baby phenomenon. It's just some ancient hatred that's always been there. Everything's a blood libel.
Great historian actually told me that this is something that's going to come, because he studied it he studied a few thousand years of this.
Benjamin Netanyahu's father was a student of the Spanish Inquisition. He believed there was no hope for Jewish life anywhere in the West. And he studied it just to illustrate the point that Jews could not exist anywhere except in their own walled-off Spartan state because of historic anti-Semitism, and the Gentiles are just fundamentally evil. Of course, he overlooks the Andalusian Bridge, in which Jews lived fairly harmoniously when Muslims ruled the Iberian Peninsula. But that's what Netanyahu is referring to. And this is his response to everything that's happening right now, where anti-Jewish attitudes are being fueled by him waving the Israeli flag, and Israelis waving a flag that contains all the historic symbols of Judaism over a blood-stained field of shredded children.
So it keeps coming and going. And of course, people's sense of history in this current discourse goes back to breakfast, so they don't know. They should even look back at breakfast. You know when breakfast was? October 7th, right? That's 2 years ago, before we had this war. Okay. What happened on that day? You had massive crowds in the capitals of the West, including in the United States, in the cities of the United States, supporting Hamas, supporting these rapists, these murderers, these beheaders of men and burners of babies. And they were shouting for Hamas. Remember that? That was before Israel did anything. We couldn't even get to the point where we defended ourselves. It took us a while. So it's not related to that. It's related to an underlying hatred of Jews that permeates the centuries, unfortunately. And there are only two things that I'd say about it. It's been a constant phenomenon of Jewish life over the millennia to have these horrible, horrible lies perpetrated about Jews. These vilifications, we poison the wells, we drink the children, the blood of children, and all sorts of crazy things. And that's repeated today. That's not new. And every time we had it in history, these vilifications were just preceded and were followed by horrible massacres and pogroms, culminating in the worst pogrom of them all, the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were basically burnt alive.
That dynamic there he's describing of blood libel leading to pogroms and massacres, that's projection. In the video, it's an example of his own blood libel. He talks about Hamas rape and beheading and burning babies. All that's a lie. That's the same tactic used against Jews a long time ago to justify massacres against them. And that's what he's doing now to the Palestinians. Blood libel to justify genocide. He's adopting the Nazi playbook and other persecutors of the Jewish people now as a Jewish supremacist waging genocide against Palestinians. It's it always goes back to projection for him.
And every time he brings up the Holocaust in the context of, or in the process of lying and spinning the genocide that he's presiding over, it causes more people to start to question the accepted narrative of Jewish genocide in World War II. And every time Ben Shapiro appears in public with a kippah on, anytime he speaks, more people develop anti-Jewish attitudes. I think of all the people that knew Ben Shapiro and had to work under him. And anything they say about Jews, it's kind of like, if that's the only kind of, him and Jeremy Boring and the Daily Wire crowd, those are the kind of Jews that you actually knew and had to work around, and you didn't know anybody else. Your resentment might be somewhat understandable. I mean, if you don't have a wider context. They want to promote anti-Semitism. They want to promote Holocaust denial by design because it reinforces Zionism. It's the fuel of Israel's apartheid system. It's what justifies Israel's entire enterprise as a supposed sanctuary for Jews. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, on that front, here's a viewer, Reed Cornwell. These two have the most negative aura coming off them than anyone I've ever seen on screen. I'm pretty sure he's talking about Benjamin Netanyahu and Ben Shapiro, not you and I. I mean, unless I'm mistaken.
I can see that being said about us. I mean, why don't you have do you have anything nice to say about Israel? They don't play cheesy Christmas music in public bathrooms in December. I mean, that's pretty much it.
They steal Palestinian food really well. It's impressive. And
they got rid of Ashkenazi food, which, just let's be real, it's not very good.
Sure,
Kasha and kugel is not very good. All the stuff I have to eat at funerals. Bring me some stolen Palestinian food.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but beyond that, no, we're pretty negative about this whole Zionism thing. Thank you, Reed.
Thanks for clarifying. Yes.
They have a dark presence, and Ben Shapiro is just a completely astroturfed figure, which we'll talk about a little later when we touch on the whole Charlie Kirk drama, as my reporting continues to be confirmed. Where are we here? I mean, on the front of just spinning the reality that we've all witnessed for the last 2 years into, well, wait, before I get into that, let me just make 2 acknowledgments on super chats. First, I think it was Stacy is showing Atrocity Incorporated in Arcata, California, I believe on the 22nd of this month. So shout out to everybody in Arcata. I heard it's a really cool town. I've never been able to visit there in Northern California. And there will be in Austin, Texas, a welcoming for Greg Stoker, U.S. military veteran who was on the Global Sumud flotilla, was kidnapped by Israel, attempting to break the siege in Austin coming up. So wanted to acknowledge that. Should we quickly cover the flotilla?
Absolutely. Well, one of the freed flotilla members is Greta Thunberg, and she spoke about, well, you know, amazingly, she was tortured along with other captives.
Let's just say abused.
And she kept the focus on the main issue.
And I could talk for a very, very long time about our mistreatment and abuses in our imprisonment, trust me, but that is not the story. What happened here was that Israel, while continuing to worsen and escalate their genocide and mass destruction with genocidal intent, attempting to erase an entire population, an entire nation in front of our very eyes, they once again violated international law by preventing humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza while people are being starved.
And what did Itamar Ben-Gvir do? He, just like he did with Marwan Barghouti, the imprisoned Palestinian political leader known as the Palestinian Mandela, he went to one of the prisons where flotilla members were being held in captivity, and he taunted them, calling them terrorists.
They terrorists.
All right, so that's enough of hearing him. But there he is going there, taunting everyone, and you know, in response, you know, people started chanting "Free, free Palestine," but they were held in horrible conditions. You know, I heard reports of people, like elderly people, who were on the flotilla who needed their medication. The Israeli soldiers just took their medication and threw it in the garbage. Things like that. I mean, and again, if this is how they treat international citizens from more than 40 countries, as Greta Thunberg, you know, said, imagine how they treat Palestinian prisoners who are held by the thousands in Israeli dungeons.
They're terrorists. I think after, in the next breath, he said they need to go to Gaza. Go to Gaza. That's what everyone would always say in Israel when they see like leftists. Go to Gaza.
Well, they were trying to go.
That's what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
I sound like Seinfeld. That's what they were trying to do. What is the deal? Seinfeld. Another one. His daughter works for Barry Weiss, who we'll cover in a second. So Greta Thunberg has turned out, actually, I kind of saw this coming. I mean, when you got to hang out with like the Rockefeller Foundation and do talks with, you know, all of these globalist Davos people to promote your climate agenda and hang out with Ursula von der Leyen and Barack Obama, eventually you're going to go crazy if you're like a kid, and go crazy in a good way, and start to recognize that there's a immediate threat to humanity that all of these figures completely support and refuse to talk about, and the hypocrisy becomes too extreme. And so Greta started to wear a keffiyeh after the genocide began, and now she's putting her body on the line. I mean, she's actually really taking it to the siege walls in a very courageous way. And it's just causing Israel, they want to torture her. They want to abuse her so badly. And Ben-Gvir is in charge of the police forces. He's in charge of the prisons. And so he ordered them to abuse her specifically, put an Israeli flag on her, make her kiss Israeli flags. That has been, you know, corroborated by multiple sources who were there. Some said she was even dragged from her hair. And you can feel like the right-wing neocons who support Israel, they want her to be like viciously abused. They like fantasize about it. They're sick. I would love to see those photographs be released. And by the way, they did the same thing to our friend and contributor Jeremy Lafredo when he was unjustly imprisoned in Israel for his reporting. They made him take pictures with Israeli flags and he tried to humiliate him. Put those photos out of her being humiliated. Let's see that, because Itamar Ben-Gvir is the best propaganda for anti-Zionism that there could be. So put that out there. Greta Thunberg is doing the work, and it raises certain questions. I mean, I think she's provoked a deeper discussion about liberals, globalist liberals, the ones who supported her, that goes beyond the question of their support for Zionism and just reveals what frauds and opportunists they are. Here she is, with the Obama Foundation, Barack Obama's liberal foundation, when he's not involved in luxury vacations and dinners with Springsteen and having splash fights with Richard Branson. He's running this foundation that when she was a kid, you can see she's a minor there, he was wanting to promote her as part of the sustainability 2030 agenda. But where's Obama now to defend her while she's being abused? Has any of these foundations that backed Greta Thunberg on the climate, or any of these world leaders, these transatlantic figures, backed her or defended her or called for her to be released at all? No,
of course not. No, of course. I mean, the one thing Obama said about Gaza recently was where he accused Hamas of being supremacists for carrying out October 7th, that the people who carried out October 7th, that they felt superior to their victims, which is a great way of describing the entire Israeli ethos from its foundation, that they're a superior state and therefore they have the right to ethnically cleanse Palestinians and steal their land and keep them in prison in a concentration camp. But Obama was saying that about the Palestinians who carried out October 7th. So that's what Obama's doing. And one of those neocons who you mentioned, who was fantasizing about Israel torturing Greta Thunberg, is a host on Newsmax. I've never heard of him until this tweet. Daniel Luco, I guess is his name.
Oh, yeah.
And this is what he said. No more sandwiches this time. Game time is over. I want Greta Thunberg terrified. I want her screaming and begging for it to stop. I want her rocking in a corner, covering her eyes, pissing and shitting in her pants. Anyway, and this goes on. So this is kind of depraved fantasy.
Can you scroll down to my reply to him?
Okay. All right.
I'm sure it's there.
All right.
Is it there? I guess not.
It's not coming up for me. No.
Okay. Well, my reply was a screenshot of an Australian news report showing that he had actually choked a woman and been prosecuted for assault during a Palestine solidarity protest. So this guy's a real lunatic. He's a Newsmax contributor, Newsmax Australia. And he speaks for the entire Zionist world when he fantasizes about Greta Thunberg being tortured. That's really what they want. And as these flotillas continue, Israel's PR craters, the United States government continues to show that it is under Zionist occupation through Ambassador Mike Huckabee, who mocked Greta Thunberg, signaling that he will not provide any consular services or defend the human rights of Americans who are being jailed there, including a Jewish American, David Adler, the only member of Congress to call for him to be released and return home safely was Ro Khanna. And I guess he got some signatures on here from some members of the Progressive Caucus. You can see who they are. Not many. Swalwell signed, which is kind of remarkable. But yeah, generally the Americans.
David's from California. I think David Adler's from California, so that's probably why they got Swalwell, who's also from the same state.
Well, this is, Trump was asked about Greta Thunberg, and he gave a funny and predictable response, was that she's always angry and she needs to calm down. It's like classic Trump, but he should be asked about the American citizens just to show the real power dynamics at play. And there's another flotilla on the way. The Conscience ship is holding our friend Thomas Becker, who's a human rights lawyer and journalist who's done a lot of human rights work in Bolivia. We just interviewed him. The interview is on our YouTube channel, and it's due to be intercepted possibly by tomorrow. This is like a conveyor belt, and it's continually exposing the siege. It is a great tactic. and we'll continue following that.
Well, should we look at just some of the PR blunders that Israel went through to try to counter the flotilla, like the influencer they set onto one of the boats?
Yeah, where is that?
I got it here. Here it is.
Hi, everyone. It is Lizzie Savetsky. I'm reporting to you live from Greta's flotilla, where 44 boats were intercepted yesterday, allegedly bringing aid to Gaza. Let's go inside. I'll give you a tour.
This is a weird outtake from American Tale. Fievel has been recruited by Israel's Hasbara brigades. This is the Yacht Rock outtake.
Margarita machine and some empty bottles. Let's go down. See,
Okay, what's funny? Should we talk about those empty bottles?
Yeah, let's go back. We'll do some can we zoom in? Is it possible? Okay, well, just look, if you're at home, just look right under, her name is Lizzie Savetsky, and look right under her left arm, and you can see Hebrew writing, a Hebrew label on the orange juice next to the margarita machine. How did the flotilla, Sumud Freedom Flotilla passengers get Israeli orange juice in Europe on their way to Gaza? How did they get it? Did a drone drop it on their ship?
Yeah, I mean, look, even if somehow that Hebrew orange juice was available in Europe, do you think a global flotilla challenging the blockade would buy an Israeli product? It's just they're so lazy with their propaganda that they're so entitled that they think they can just plant a Israeli product on a boat and think that they can get away with it, because they have so much contempt for their audience too. They think everyone are so stupid and so malleable because they have a history of getting away with some of the worst crimes in human history. So I guess why wouldn't they think that about a global audience? But for anyone with their eyes open, you can see, and people have zoomed in and shown that literally the juice on the boat is in Hebrew, and they talk about condoms and margarita machine.
Yeah, here we go.
I see a bed. I see some of the same things that I saw in the encampments on the college campuses. No aid. It's so weird. All I see is some condom wrappers, drug paraphernalia, needles. No aid. We've given the pro-Hamas.
Yeah, so people are shooting heroin on the really. I mean, this reminds me. Remember when there was that video from a pro-Palestine protest, and there were two guys with keffiyehs around their faces, and they were screaming, we will do October 7th 1,000 more times. It was obviously Jewish guys. They pretending to be.
Where's my inhaler?
Yeah, so now they're going with the flotilla members shooting up at sea.
And look at the boat. That's not a flotilla boat. There's one bed that's neatly made up with high thread count sheets. There's hardly any space for anything in there. It's in a marina. It looks like just some random Israeli pleasure yacht that belongs to some Russian Israeli oligarch who's down with Netanyahu. I mean, who even believes that ship was part of the flotilla? And she appears to be part of the influencer brigade we'll talk about in a second that is getting up to $7,000 per post. How much did she get for that? Is that money well spent? It only highlights their contempt for all of us.
Yeah, well, for those who missed it, this is from Responsible Statecraft. Nick,
wait, can we just pull back from this post really quick, because there's another one I want to highlight.
Yeah.
Okay, because I want to explain how they kind of got there.
Okay.
Or just provide some context on this. This is going around the 7,000. All right, let's just start from the top. Is Benjamin Netanyahu, while outside the UN, announced an 8th front to his 7-front war, which is a regional war. It's now moved to the United States in a meeting with influencers who are ostensibly paid by Netanyahu's foreign ministry, which has announced a $150 million budget for propaganda, or Hasbara, this year. Netanyahu said the 8th front is the American front. We're going to buy TikTok. We're going to try to take over Twitter X, and we're going to make sure that we take on what he called the woke Reich, referring to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, their top two targets. And so in the wake of that statement by Netanyahu, an Esther project was rolled out. We know about it through DOJ Foreign Agent Registration Act filings, which reveal a paid U.S. influencer campaign through a firm called Bridges Partners LLC, not linked, I don't think, to Project Esther, which is the Heritage Foundation plan to kind of like from over a year ago. And it shows that the firm received $200,000 to recruit and coordinate social media influencers, and up to $900,000 in payments over several months, and a detailed pricing schedule, $60,000 in upfront payments to cover influencer recruitment and concept development, and another $140,000 in development phase payments as 5 or 6 influencers began posting, and monthly allocations of up to $250,000 earmarked for influencer fees, production, and agency costs. So that's key. And now you can, let's go to the next part of the puzzle, which is the $7,000.
So this comes from Responsible Statecraft, and there were some documents showing that Israel is paying influencers $7,000 per post. $7,000.
So that's basically crunching the numbers that I just read off.
Yeah.
From the Bridges Partners LLC. It basically comes down to, with the amount that Israel is pumping into this influencer campaign, they're pumping so much money into it that the amount they would get per post is anywhere from $6,143 to $7,372 on the high end.
And the article talks about a cohort of 14 to 18 influencers to create content. I don't think it actually names the influencers, right? So
no, because FARA doesn't do that, in possible violation of FARA. And I think it's worth noting that Pam Bondi, who was the top lobbyist at Ballard Partners for Qatar and is now the Attorney General, has loosened FARA requirements. And several Republican-controlled states are only requiring FARA disclosures for adversary states, allowing Israel to lobby more easily.
So we don't know for sure who these 14 to 18 influencers are, but should we look at two possible, I would say, likely candidates?
Two likely candidates, and some of the most alienating, repulsive Hasbara is about to drop in 3, 2, 1.
Imagine supporting people who start wars just to lose the wars so they can cry about it and then try it all again.
You must see anti-Semites are literally obsessed with Jews. Now walk with me. While you must see anti-Semites are stacking eviction notices, Jews are out here stacking up businesses.
Jews control all the industries. Maybe if you spent more time taking notes from successful people, you wouldn't have to spend your nights and weekends spreading hate from your anonymous account with an anime profile picture.
Do you work as hard as Jews? Do you network like Jews? No, because you're too busy cheering on a group of musty terrorists who smell like dirty earring backs. And if we're gonna keep it real, you're really mad because your income is giving side hustle.
Period.
How you gonna hate from outside Shabbat? You can't even get in.
It reads like a parody, like they're just trying to parody the most obnoxious Israel supporters possible, but actually they're real. These are real people.
They're real people
thinking they're doing Israel's bidding. And this is the kind of content that is now going to be especially promoted on TikTok now that it's essentially owned by pro-Israel oligarchs under a forced sale by Donald Trump.
That's Xavier de Rousseau, who I got to know because he was one of the figures at the Secret Hamptons Influencer Summit when I got a list of names of all the influencers. He came up and I called him and he hung up on me, then said that he was in a post about me calling him, that he hung up because of stranger danger and that he was wine drunk. And then he subsequently reached out to me and said, this whole thing is so ghetto. Let's just clear this up. And I said, all right, let's have a phone call. And I wanted to, have a conversation with him. but he refused a phone call and said I can text questions to him. He never responded to any questions, journalistic questions I submitted, but he said that he had 3 weddings to go to and was in Italy, and that's why he couldn't talk to me on the phone. And that he was on a boat on the way to a wedding when I initially called. So how are you affording that? And go to his Instagram page. Every topic at the top of his page almost every topic relates to Zionism. He's also supposed to be a conservative influencer. Like, is that really conservative? Did that post have a conservative vibe? And then he's next to Emily Austin, who is known through the world of sports journalism. And she's represented by Casey Wasserman, who, by the way, is one of the top pro-Israel fundraisers for the Democrats. And Joe Biden hosted a Haim Saban fundraiser for Biden at his home in 2020, early 2024, I believe. And she's now being put out there as a conservative, anti-woke influencer. And she denied getting the $7,000 per post in a very oblique way to me on Twitter. It's pretty obvious what's going on here. And the propaganda is horrible. I mean, that right there, they're taunting people for paying taxes against their will to Israel, saying you're giving them side hustle and you can't even get into Shabbat. The only attitude that post is going to produce is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And by design.
Yeah.
So that's what Israel's paying for. I mean, I don't know who they think they're winning over there.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, that makes sense. And this speaks to, Israel supporters in general. They're so grating, they're so annoying that you wonder if it is by design to actually foment anti-Semitism to help, as you long argued, justify Israel's existence as a Jewish supremacist state. Because it is such, people are just generally so annoyed by these people because they're so insufferable. And they put that out there on screen so shamelessly.
So here's another thing, exactly. And here's another thing that I think is worth flagging, that Israel, when I say Israel, I mean like the Israeli government, this is all registered through the Department of Justice foreign agent registration forms. You can see the contract. I think it's one of the most shocking contracts I've ever seen for a foreign agent influence campaign. And it's that Israel, this is not, this is information liberation. It's not an understatement to say that Israel is paying $4.1 million to brainwash Americans with VR and target churches with geofencing ads. Here's one of the 10/7 experience that churches will get through a $4 million campaign that will enlist churches from Denver to Las Vegas to Southern California to Phoenix into just like a Clockwork Orange style campaign to watch Hamas militants rampage through kibbutzim on October 7th or something like that. The millions are being paid to conservative activist Chad Schnitzker's new firm, Show Faith by Works. It expects to receive $3.25 million over 5 months through Havas Media. And this is just the first installation, but if you look at the contract, geofencing means that anyone who enters the perimeter of any church that agrees to this program, that signs up to it, your phones will become targeted with ads for tourism to Israel, Israel propaganda, 10/7 propaganda, and then your phone will be tracked continuously after you leave that perimeter. And these include churches connected to TPUSA, which in the Phoenix area, which have hosted TPUSA rallies. Here's a trailer for one of the brainwashing propaganda films.
There you go.
And it was a beautiful day. The window was open. I could see the sky.
And I'm dancing as I'm walking.
There were Arab, Jews, all were party together.
Yeah, it was just everybody was on Mali on the Gaza border. Everything was fine.
And then it all started. Rockets.
The music stopped.
And I don't understand until I heard the shot.
Kids running for their life. הם נכנסו לממ"ד, אני ממש זוכר את הקנה של הרובה. Small towns, שדרות, from אלומין to בארי, in קיבוץ ניר עוז. Innocent life are being taken.
Where can I go?
For their life. הם נכנסו לממ"ד, אני ממש זוכר.
Who could have blown up that house and all those houses? It looks like a scene in Gaza, blown up by powerful weaponry. Interesting. Anyway, you get the point. That's what you will be exposed to if you just simply go to church at many evangelical megachurches, because Israel is afraid of its cratering support now among young American Christians. It's something we've never seen before, like the level of propaganda. And again, I think it's going to just produce alienation and cause people to start to ask just questions and harbor resentment towards another religious group that's attempting to manipulate and control them on behalf of another country. And these are evangelical churches where a disproportionate percentage of parishioners probably consider themselves America first, or were taken in by that Trump branding. And that folds perfectly, I think, into the next segment, where we continue to cover the Charlie Kirk saga, as my reporting for the Grayzone continues to be confirmed by new revelations of private discussions that Charlie Kirk was holding days before his death with a coterie of Netanyahu cutouts, Israel First fanatics who were lobbying him constantly and attempting to push talking points on him before his tour began. I don't know if you want to intro this, Aaron, or you want me to?
It's your story. Go ahead.
Well, I had produced a 3-part investigative series on this, starting with Charlie Kirk beginning to loathe Netanyahu, feeling like he was being manipulated. The term bullying was given to me by a longtime friend of Charlie Kirk. He felt like he was being bullied. He felt like he was being blackmailed to a degree. It was moral blackmail, the term that he was actually using. But that opened up this saga. The second piece was about the Secret Hamptons Influencer Summit, where we started to learn about who was lobbying Charlie Kirk, how he was constantly being held up on Zoom calls, WhatsApp groups, text exchanges with a group of 10 or so what I would call Netanyahu cutouts in the US, including Josh Hammer, Sean McGuire, Bill Ackman was one of them at certain intervals, and a rabbi, formerly American, now in Israel, settler rabbi named Pesach Walicki, who runs the Israel influencer programs and propaganda tours for conservative influencers called Israel 365 Action. And they were just on his back constantly. And then in my third piece, I reported that Robert Shillman, one of the most prolific anti-Islam sugar daddies across the West, a Israel First fanatic who funds Friends of the IDF, has funded Tommy Robinson, Laura Loomer at times in her career, and was a major funder of TPUSA, who helped basically fuel Charlie Kirk's career since a young age, had bailed on him because he was going to host Tucker Carlson at a TPUSA event. And now, thanks to Candace Owens, former TPUSA employee, longtime friend of Charlie Kirk, we now know that Charlie Kirk was more angry about the way he was being treated by those he referred to as Jewish donors than we even understood from text messages that she revealed on her last live stream. And she really dropped the bomb right here. Had to stage what's happening.
Try one more time.
So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, oh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. And somebody writes, a donor writes, please do not invite Candace. That might feel good short term, but it's not good long term, in my opinion. Like all groups, you're going to get a wide variety of opinions. That nasty free will thing that God bestowed on us makes life frustrating at times after the dust settles a bit, maybe. So again, this is 48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was very clear and he was very explicit, and he did not back down, not in that Hamptons meeting, which they're all lying about, nor in this text thread. I'm not going to reveal the names of the other 7. Actually, you know what? I disagree with myself 4 seconds ago. Let's just throw in Josh Hammer for funsies. He's on this chat, okay?
So yeah, so Josh Hammer, Newsweek editor at large. His job is basically to keep the Republican Party in line with Israel, conservatives in line with Israel. He's been attacking Candace constantly. He's been saying that Charlie Kirk never had any questions about supporting Israel. They dropped this digitally reproduced letter. And it wasn't just the neocons who were pushing that letter. It was certain other influencers who, we thought were hostile to Israel, but more questionable how they've been pushing the line that these neocons and Likudniks wanted us to believe about Charlie Kirk in his final days.
Well, Netanyahu also referenced a letter, right?
Yep.
But he wouldn't release its contents because Netanyahu really.
Well, we now have the full letter, just to be sure.
Yeah, but Netanyahu really wanted to hammer home the message that Charlie Kirk and him were tight, and that Charlie Kirk was a supporter of Israel up until the end.
Yes, and I mean the letter was from May. It was before a lot of things happened, like the summit where Tucker and comic Dave Smith and were on stage, and Epstein was called a Mossad agent, and Charlie Kirk started to get massive pushback. It was before the influencer summit at the Hamptons, where Charlie Kirk was yelled at by the British Zionist fanatic Natasha Hausdorff. And it was before all these exchanges, which I think took place 2 days before Charlie Kirk's death, that we just saw Candace Owens drop. And it's now these text messages, while most of them were anonymous, except Josh Hammer's name was revealed. Andrew Colvett, who's basically the comms man for TPUSA, has confirmed them as authentic.
This show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there.
So authentic. And that brings us to something possibly more disturbing, which was Josh Hammer's activity the day after that exchange took place, in which he was present, in which he witnessed that, and he's basically been covering up that exchange ever since Charlie Kirk's death, effectively lying about what was going on. This is bizarre to me and unsettling. So this is Village Crazy Lady Mel Whitty. I wonder if Josh Hammer went and dug up this 12-year-old Trump tweet before or after he and Rabbi Pesach had their last conference call with Charlie the night before he was murdered. So that was right after that text exchange where Charlie Kirk says that he's done being pro-Israel and he's sick of being bullied by Jewish donors. This is 9/9/25. Josh Hammer says it's based, digging up a tweet by Donald Trump from 2013 stating, should be public execution for all to see. You will end this bullshit fast. What is that about? Why do you suddenly want public execution? Like, what's going on in your mind or in your life? I don't know. It could be something else.
And so wait, Josh Hammer posted that the night before Charlie Kirk was killed?
Yes.
So the implication there would be that he was like previewing. I mean, that's a stretch for me because that would be pretty.
Well, I didn't imply that. It's just weird.
Yeah, well, of course it's weird. I mean, these people are freaks, And that speaks to Josh Hammer being a pro-Israel fanatic, so he's going to post weird things. But to tie that to Charlie Kirk's murder,
for the purpose of Aaron's edification and YouTube, you remember like it's like saying like the vaccine works, but no, there is no evidence that Israel participated in this assassination of Charlie Kirk. Okay, we're not saying that. It's just weird. It's also weird that there was a 1998 film by Brian De Palma called Snake Eyes, in which on September 10th, a U.S. defense secretary who is about to stop a corrupt arms deal is assassinated by a Palestinian patsy controlled by military operatives. And his name is Charlie Kirkland. I mean, that's also weird. There's a lot of weird coincidences. By the way, great film. Go out and see it. Brian De Palma's, they're not.
I haven't heard of that one. I'd love to. That sounds great.
Great conspiracy theory film.
What's it called again?
Snake Eyes.
Snake Eyes. Yeah, I never heard.
Nicolas Cage.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of coincidences, but that's weird. But the point is, this is about what we've been talking about for most of this live stream, which is that Israel's support in the U.S. has been collapsing. Charlie Kirk was one of the most important Gentile assets that Israel ever had, which is why Netanyahu came out immediately and sought to claim his legacy after his killing and sought to convince us that he was unequivocally on Israel's side to the end. And we know that was changing. Something was changing there, and that Charlie Kirk was open. While he was not a supporter of Palestine, was no friend of the Palestinians, was pumping out anti-Islamic rhetoric all the time, he was opening up the stage for conservative voices who spoke to the grassroots who were sick of Israel's influence in the United States. And it was a huge threat to the Israel lobby.
Yes.
That's the point.
And that to me is what's so important about your story. And, whether no matter how much you loathe the American right wing and find all their views distasteful, if you care about ending the Gaza genocide, you at least have to acknowledge the significance of there being a split inside that coalition, as represented by people like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace Owens. And if we want to end the genocide, that fissure there, that source of tension, which Charlie Kirk was, according to all your reporting, was at least a part of, in the sense he was not going along with his pro-Israel donors to the point where they were threatening his funding. That's important. And, that could help be part of something that could lead to some restraining force on Israel in American society. Because it's not just going to come, I hate to say, from like the activist left. There needs to be as broad a coalition of disgust at Israel as possible. And what's happening on the right, whatever you think of their views and all these other issues that we disagree on, I think is really significant. And the efforts that the enforcers go to enforce obedience and conformity by threatening Charlie Kirk's funding unless he bans certain people, that's a tactic obviously also used against the left. And so joint revulsion of that and opposition to that could be very significant.
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about the professional sectarian left that would never, for example, have lunch with Tucker Carlson, and that's why they are losers who have failed. But that doesn't mean the entire left or the entire activist left. I think there's more of a deeper consciousness among those who are actually staying in the U.S. and fighting on this issue about building coalitions, because there are so many rifts in the right, and that the right-wing grassroots is just pretty much done with Israel for its own reasons. And there can be a major conflict with them over other issues. But on this one, it is important to build a coalition when one is coming into view. So yeah. I'll have more reporting about TPUSA and this whole saga. I got more juice on this one. But I think it's important to discuss the development from yesterday.
You mean the first day on the job for an exciting new media executive?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, congratulations to Barry Weiss and all of her new employees at CBS News. Barry Weiss, for those who don't know, pro-Israel activist, opinion columnist, left the New York Times a few years ago, made a big deal out of it because the Times newsroom she felt was too woke and was hostile towards her. Founded the Free Press, which she painted as this heterodox website, when really it was just there to, mock so-called wokeness and promote Israel. And ever since the genocide in Gaza began, that's what the Free Press has done. Most recently, they went out of their way to try to deny famine in Gaza with multiple posts. And the point is here, they're an opinion site. It's not journalism. They don't really do reporting. But yet, because of the magic of our free market system, of the marketplace of ideas, the new owners of CBS News, the Ellisons, some of the richest people in the world who are avowed pro-Israel fanatics, basically handed over CBS News to Barry Weiss. And on Monday, after buying the Free Press for $150 million, the Ellisons also made Barry Weiss the new editor-in-chief of CBS News.
The new editor-in-chief of CBS News, Barry Weiss, introduced herself to CBS News staff in a way that distinctly recalled what Aaron referred to as the plot of a horror movie. She introduced herself and said she wants to win and restore trust. She said she was excited for staff to get to know the Free Press and ended her remarks by saying, "Let's do the effing news." There was a letter that was issued to all employees. Do we have that letter?
Yeah, well, here's a screenshot. Here, what's so funny about this is she claims to be a reporter, which she's just objectively not. Like, I'm going to approach my new job the way any reporter would, with an open mind, a notebook, and an urgent deadline. I'm paraphrasing there, but basically, it's like, this is the most unbelievable spectacle, or somebody with no experience, A, in broadcast news, which is what CBS News is, B, in actual journalism, because she's never been a reporter. She's an opinion columnist who then founded a website, the Free Press, that was, yes, it attracted a sizable number of subscribers, but its main source of support was from a cabal of pro-Israel billionaires who gave Barry Weiss a lot of money and have now been rewarded handsomely by the Ellisons. Now presiding over an entire news organization and presenting herself as some sort of objective truth teller when she's a pro-Israel activist / opinion journalist whose college years were spent trying to get Palestinian professors at Columbia University fired because she felt unsafe as a Jewish person on campus, thereby embodying the very same identitarian, so-called woke politics that she became famous for mocking.
Yeah, do we have that screenshot?
Well, I showed the screenshot of her saying I'm going to approach this as a reporter.
Yeah, as a reporter.
And here is here's more from her memo to colleagues today. Just imagine going into work and having to learn that this is your new boss and have them write stuff like this. This is from media reporter Max Tani. Barry Weiss.
I just read this.
Okay, well, she says, just reiterate, she wants to win, and she says, "Let's do the effing news." It's just like this is like some pro.
It's like something from Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah.
Combined with Ken Kesey, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's like Nurse Ratched appears in Aaron Sorkin newsroom.
Or I'm thinking of like the Tom Hanks movie Big, where Tom Hanks becomes he's a child now in a grown man's body. Now he's like an executive at a toy company, right? So this is kind of the same thing. It's like you have like an infantile person who's just whose identity is based around Jewish supremacy, Israel. Now, I'm a media executive now. Let's do this. It's like being handed the keys to the kingdom, just by virtue of being a pro-Israel activist.
Let's just pan out a little bit and put this into a broader context. Sumner Redstone was a big media tycoon in the US. He owned like BET, even though he was a white Jewish man for years, and turned it into a trash den, got rid of the news. I mean, he played a role in like he clearly was like attempting to poison black culture. It felt like he owned Paramount, and he died. He was a big donor to Israel, one of these old generation of Zionist billionaires. His wife, Sherry Redstone, she's getting old. She is a ultra Zionist. She passes on Paramount to David Ellison through his company Skydance. David Ellison is the son and heir to the fortune of Larry Ellison, who's on the board of the Friends of the IDF and runs Oracle, which is planting data centers all around the country. Got its start as a CIA contractor. Larry Ellison's, to the extent anyone could be friends with Netanyahu, his friend has hosted him on his private Ellison's Island in Hawaii. And this is all part of an Israeli Netanyahu-directed takeover of as many media assets as they can grab, along with TikTok, which has been purchased by Larry Ellison and Andreessen Horowitz, of venture capitalists who also simultaneously have supported and invested in Bari Weiss and her career and her astroturfing her, basically using her as a vehicle for their agenda. Like the free press, Bari Weiss constantly promotes Mark Andreessen as some kind of genius when he himself turns to like Curtis Yarvin for insights on how to establish a techno dictatorship in the US. Ben Horowitz, his partner, is the son of David Horowitz, the former Trotskyist fanatical anti-Palestinian agitator who was like an early mentor to Charlie Kirk. So this is the takeover. They're going to make a bid, as we said last week, on CNN.
Yep.
And so now it's all going into, it's being implemented. Bari Weiss has been installed in the newsroom. Someone who's 41 years old, runs the Free Press, completely lies about the Free Press audience to justify the artificial valuation of Free Press at $150 million. I mean, go to their YouTube channel right now and compare it to our YouTube channel. Nobody's watching their content. And their studio, like, look at our studio. Like, I got these shelves from, like, I don't know where I got them from, like Walmart. Look at Aaron's background, and then go look at their studios. Like, they have like that shelf looks like you found it on the street. I mean, you find some good stuff on the street in Brooklyn.
I'm being offended. You're dissing my background.
No, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's fine.
Okay.
I'm down with it. This shows that we're real. This is like a real independent outlet, and we are heavily suppressed on YouTube. We're closing in on 500,000 viewers. I mean, we're doing like real like when we go out and report, like I'm holding my phone and a Bluetooth mic. Like the Free Press, it's like they have like CBS level production. Like that guy, the token guy that they have, Coleman, what's his name?
Coleman Hughes.
Mini Van Jones, I call him. Like, look at his studio, Conversations with Coleman. His studio is like elaborate. They have tons of money.
But let's not.
And they can't even get anywhere near the amount of subscribers we have. And then Bari Weiss is running around saying, we have 1.5 million subscribers, and that means, no, 150 million subscribers. No, we have 6 billion subscribers, and that's why we get valued at 150 million. What should the value of the Grayzone be based on that? Because it turns out they don't have that many paid subscribers. How much should we get? Can some VCs buy the Grayzone?
Well, but it's not just about buying the Grayzone. It's then installing the editor, the founder of the Free Press, as the head of CBS News, one of the biggest news corporations in the world. They have teams of reporters, not just in the US, but around the world, freelancers, producers. This is like a real deal operation. And Bari Weiss, opinion columnist, pro-Israel activist, now gets like, okay, like I'm the new editor in chief. Let's do this. And just to illustrate your point about the lack of audience. So Glenn Greenwald pointed this out. He posted the screenshot of Bari Weiss's announcement video that the Free Press is joining Paramount. And Glenn points out that after 8 hours, this video only had 16,000 views, which is like nothing. I think like a recent video I did on Syria, which is a relatively niche topic. Like not even all of our audience wants to watch videos about Syria. I think that probably had more views after 8 hours than Bari Weiss announcing that her outlet is like joining this giant media conglomerate, and she's the new editor-in-chief of CBS News. So, I mean, that just speaks to where things are at. But who was definitely very excited about this and was definitely tuning in is Israeli officials. Glenn also pointed this out. Here's Michael Oren, right? He's the former Israel ambassador to the U.S., right? My most heartfelt mazel tov to Barry Weiss, the embodiment of an Eshet Halil, a woman of valor, on her appointment as editor-in-chief of CBS News.
Where's the tweet?
She will bring, I'm sorry. She will, there it is. She will bring journalism back from the brink and set renewed media standards of bipartisanship, excellence, and the relentless search for the truth. And there he is. He's the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Here's one more. This is
these are very indigenous-looking people to the region, by the way.
Yes. This is Tal Heinrich. Thank you, Barry. This is a win for common sense, a win for intellectual discourse over an activist one. It's a win for a society that wants to be healthier. And who is Tal Heinrich? Spokesperson for the Israeli government.
She's the one who spread the lie about beheaded babies.
There you go. There you go. So yeah. And just one more word about, before we move on too far, about Sherry Redstone, who sold CBS News Paramount to the Ellisons. She said that the reason she sold CBS News, she wanted to focus her life now on Israel activism. And this is her post sale. This is a headline from Jewish Insider. Post Paramount sale, Sherry Redstone is full speed ahead on addressing anti-Semitism. So the money that she got from selling her news outlet, her father's news outlet, to the pro-Israel oligarchs, the Ellisons, she will now use to spread more Israeli propaganda on her own and hand over the reins to the Ellisons and Barry Weiss. And what is Barry Weiss? What is Barry Weiss going to do as the editor-in-chief of CBS News? I mean, they already have a president. She's reporting directly to Larry Ellison.
To David Ellison.
To David Ellison,
well,
sorry.
And therefore Larry Ellison.
Yes. So what does that mean? She's just going to be there to enforce the narrative, the Zion narrative, and to root out any employee who has critical thinking skills and is not willing to go along with the prevailing Hasbara.
Well, there's this whole mask to the Zionist propaganda, which is common sense and just the news. Like, we're just Walter Cronkite. We're not pushing woke propaganda, that the corporate media is supposedly too woke. And we're just going to speak to common sense Americans because it's crazy. We're not going to, tell you that we're not going to be reporting on trans kids and, girls, like men with penises going into women's locker rooms. Like, they're going to be against that. Masking 3-year-olds, they're going to be against that. And then they're going to tell you that there are not enough Jews being given special protections at Ivy League colleges.
Exactly.
And there isn't a Jews only DEI. And they're just going to take off the table any coverage of even the humanitarian situation in Gaza. It's going to become eventually too obvious. Also, what they're going to do is degrade the newsroom and transform it into a series of podcasts and a bunch of viral postings that will make it impossible for any actual news to be transmitted. And they're going to push on race, kind of an anti-BLM, large black men are stabbing our women in public transportation agenda. It's going to be that. It's going to be moderately pro-Trump. And it's also, but then behind that, there's a deeper scandal here, which ties into Zionism. And I tried to address that in a reply to Barry Weiss because she's making it too obvious what's going on here, which is the conflict of interest. There's a massive conflict of interest taking place here where she's actually maintaining the editorial role at the Free Press, which is a partisan neocon website, while controlling a legacy media asset, which is supposed to be objective. And we know the corporate media, we always say it's an enemy of the people, that they're not objective. They support the rich. They support war. They support Israel, but in a more insidious way than Barry Weiss will. But now the conflict of interest is out editorially, but also financially, because who has backed Barry Weiss as she made her comeback after the New York Times? It's been the AI warlords. It's the Palantir Mafia that has backed Barry Weiss, Joe Lonsdale, Palantir co-founder, is the chairman of her weird anti-woke University of Austin diploma mill, where they study Plato alongside the Technological Republic by Palantir CEO Alex Karp, who is a trustee of this university, therefore a supporter.
And who is a sociopath. I mean,
sociopath.
We've played the video before of Alex Karp, you know, where a Palestinian woman confronts him and says, like, your technology is killing my family in Gaza. And he laughs at her and says, no, it's actually Hamas that's killing.
Palantir's providing targeting in Gaza. They are like objectively involved in the genocide in Gaza, and they're backing Barry Weiss, along with David Sachs, who is another tech millionaire, a billionaire, who's in charge of steering AI and crypto policy in Trump's favor as Trump initiates various meme coin rug pulls on his suggestible base. She's been backed by Mark Andreessen, as I said before. And she promoted these figures on her podcast. So let me just like read this, spell this out, because this is like this is a corruption scandal that goes beyond the ideological component of installing a voice of Likudnik Zionism as editor. So Barry Weiss says, so much gratitude and love for so many today as she's installed as editor. Joe Lonsdale is at the top of the list. Joe Lonsdale, as I said, was one of the original 3 founders of Palantir, and he's backed her.
Max, try to zoom in on your screen if you can so we can all read. Yeah.
And so I responded as this way: even though no critical thinker trusts you or expects an ounce of accountability, some questions are in order. And these are the questions. Was Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale one of the investors who profited from the sale of Free Press to Paramount Skydance? What about David Sachs, a White House official who helped steer AI and crypto policy at the direction of Trump? Who are the investors who profited from the sale? How much did they earn? And will they continue to play a role now that you're at CBS? What sort of favors will they call in? Basically, you have an editor who's been backed by a Trump official and is continuing to be backed through the free press. And that Trump official may have actually made money off the sale. I would like to know if David Sachs was one of the investors who profited from the sale. That would be a direct violation.
Yeah, well, how would they not profit if they're the investors and the company gets sold for $150 million?
Right. I mean, their investment must have been very small compared to that.
Of course, because there's no way they're worth $150 million. A site with a few thousand subscribers is now worth $150 million. I mean, again, like as we talked about, there are podcasts, there are leftist podcasts with way bigger audiences, paying audiences than the free press has.
Yeah, Chapo Trap House dwarfs their audience.
Yeah, they'd be worth like 10 times that amount.
Even though they've never hosted us. Will 60 Minutes become a vehicle to propagandize for the ultra-Zionist AI warlords who astroturfed your career and artificially manufactured the $150 million valuation of the free press, whose middling YouTube viewership pales in comparison to the organic audience of actually independent news outlets and podcasts? Your conflicts of interest are off the charts. In fact, they seem to clearly violate the publishing principles of CBS News, which state the following: a conflict of interest exists when a CBS News and station's employee is in a position to make a business or news decision that might appear to result in some personal gain or advantage to them. It's clear you were installed at CBS not to restore public trust in the failing and odious corporate media, but to take these inconvenient issues off the table for the techno-feudal oligarchy and to shut down coverage of that nasty little Gaza Holocaust in which you helped get our friend Rifat Al-Arir killed. Many understandably lament your promotion, but I view it as a welcome mask off moment. And I really do welcome this because now we can see corporate media for what it really is and always has been. And I don't think it's going to work out. I don't think these will be happy times down the road for Barry Weiss and her ideological cabal. I think she's going to be exposed and it's going to be a rough go.
I mean, imagine working for her. I mean, there's going to be a rebellion from at least some people who have some dignity and some respect for the profession of journalism. There's a lot of people who work at CBS News. Not everyone's going to want to work for this person who's devoted her life to to basically serving crypto billionaires and smearing critics of Israel and denying genocide and famine inside Gaza, and yes, inciting the murder of people like Rafat El-Arir. And I want to say a few words about comparing your response, not just talking about the Gaza genocide, but actually raising legitimate questions about a conflict of interest with Barry Weiss and her investors, who profiting off of the sale to the Ellisons. So compare your reaction to the comparison in corporate media. The same corporate media that Barry Weiss sort of made her name around mocking and claiming to be different from, by saying she was going to fight all the woke culture, she was going to be heterodox, she was going to fight the corporate media. That same corporate media that Barry Weiss made her name off of, distancing herself from, ostensibly, turned around and just did everything it could to kiss her feet up upon this announcement. Even though she mocked them, there's still ultimately so much class solidarity to like the higher power of like serving Israel and serving the oligarchs, that if you read the coverage in the New York Times, which Barry Weiss like publicly denounced and said, like, I have to leave this out, they presented her as like, oh, she's like a feisty scrap, entrepreneur who made her name. And like, CBS News is shaking things up by bringing her in. Brian Stelter of CBS News, similar thing, like CBS News, this is risky, but they're shaking it up. No, all they're doing here is trying to consolidate support for Israel because people are so repelled by it.
And the tech oligarchs.
And the tech oligarchs, exactly. So even the outlets that Barry Weiss tried to distance herself from and mocked as being too woke, they have so much ultimate class solidarity with the tech overlords, with the pro-Israel billionaires, that even they feel compelled to kiss the ring of Barry Weiss, even though she mocked them. Whereas with people, independent journalists like us, they won't even acknowledge that we exist. You know what I mean? Like, as you saw recently with your reporting on Charlie Kirk, which the New York Times, even in confirming some of the stuff that you reported, won't even acknowledge you. And I've had similar experiences with Russiagate where they won't even say my name. But with Barry Weiss, who openly mocks them and makes her name, her whole brand off of distancing herself from, they have to kiss the ring because ultimately they serve the same people.
Well, you're just jealous, according to Matt Taibbi.
Unfortunately, Matt Taibbi did say that the people who are critical of Barry Weiss are jealous losers. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to be in that position that she's in.
You wouldn't want to be the head of CBS News? Yeah, I don't think that would be very comfortable.
I'm actually doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
Good luck. Barry will be watching. No one will be watching CBS News though.
Well, listen, just a few more revelations about who the people are who brought in Barry Weiss to CBS News. So it's the Ellisons, right? At times the richest people in the world. Their company, Oracle, check out like what's been happening there. This is from Eli Clifton of Responsible Statecraft. He says executives at Oracle, which is also the new owner of TikTok under the forced sale by Trump. But again, the Ellisons, which founded Oracle, now own CBS News. They're very outspoken in Israeli media about the company's mission to support the state of Israel, right? And this is what Eli Clifton also says. Insufficiently pro-Israel Oracle staff are sent for mental health counseling. Okay, so if you work at Oracle and you're deemed to be insufficiently supportive of Israel, they're going to send you to HR for mental health counseling. So is that ethos now going to be the norm at CBS News under Barry Weiss's reign? That if you don't support Israel, like say the journalist in Gaza that CBS News employs, they have a producer actually in Gaza who's filed some reports. Are they going to refer him now, if they don't fire him already, for mental health counseling?
You get a zyolobotomy.
It's a cult, and we're ruled by it. And they're not only very influential. They literally now control major elements of our media. They control TikTok, and they control TikTok because both of our ruling parties couldn't handle young people being shown images of the carnage in Gaza that our rulers were supporting. So they forced the sale of TikTok to pro-Israel oligarchs who send people for mental health counseling if they don't support Israel enough.
Maybe they'll pass a law and we'll finally get free mental health counseling in this country. That if you're an Israel critic, you have to go get Oracle provided electroshock therapy. It really is like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah. Here's another one from former Oracle CEO Safra Katz, which sounds like an Israeli name. We believe we have to embed the love and respect for Israel in the American culture, according to former Oracle CEO Safra Katz. And so that's a refreshing admission from a tech overlord, that the only way to get people to love and respect Israel is to brainwash them. That's what she's talking about by embedding.
These emails are a treasure trove. We reported on some leaks that journalist Jack Paulson found at the Grayzone. We reported David Ellison basically collaborating with Benny Gantz, former Israeli defense minister, on a plan to spy on Americans who are involved in Palestine solidarity activism. This is the owner of CBS News. He's an Israeli spy, basically. You can read the article. It just doesn't get more blatant than this. That's the post-October 7th world we're living in, where everything is just blatant. The mask is off. There's no rules-based order anymore to conceal the jackboot in your face and the cold, dead hand of a rapacious empire. It's just all there for us to see. And in some ways, as unpleasant and alienating as it is, it's welcome to just see the world we live in as it is. The question is, as they buy one media property after another, including social media, and you see this happening in Ecuador, where billionaire president, Miami-born Daniel Noboa, is buying up all of the critical media. We've seen Erdogan and his AKP buy it up in Turkey. It's kind of a strategy. As they do that, where do we go? I mean, YouTube is controlled by a military contractor, Google. Twitter X, Elon Musk. A couple months ago, he launched it. I think it was 2 months ago. He launched an Israeli spy satellite into space through SpaceX. He's a defense contractor. We depend on those as platforms. So where do we go? That's the question. And the only answer I have right now is that people will leave TikTok and go somewhere else, and TikTok will suffer, and these properties will become toxic. They will not be revitalized. And Brian Stelter saying it's bold move is proof of an imminent failure.
The kiss of death. The kiss of death.
Yeah, absolute kiss of death
from Brian Stelter. Yeah.
So you want to wrap there? I want to wrap there.
Okay.
We were going to do Van Jones.
We can save that for another time.
We can save that. I'm sure he'll be back.
Yeah. And also that'll give us more time to collect all the zingers that Norman Finkelstein's been putting out about Van Jones and Barry Weiss. He's been putting out some good ones. So we'll have more time to collect all of Norman Finkelstein's jokes about Barry Weiss and Van Jones. They're good.
Well, our site is not being bought by Israeli cutouts. Our website, we're not being bought by venture capitalists. So you can always find real investigative reporting at thegrayzone.com. And I think and I hope that we're going to have some investigative reporting on Venezuela coming soon, as the Trump administration, led by Marco Rubio, deepens his deadly gusano games and lurches toward an actual regime change war in Venezuela. So watch that space. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, just that we'll definitely be covering the regime change plans in Venezuela next time, because it looks like that is ramping up inside the Trump administration. Someone like Rick Grenell, who was appointed to negotiate with Venezuela, he's been completely sidelined. And Marco Rubio is running the show, which is a very ominous development. It shows that, Trump's claims about no more wars, no more endless wars, no more conflicts overseas, just a complete lie, a complete scam. And Venezuela could be next.
Complete scam. It's all about the oil. And the drug war is the cover. Thanks a lot to Eric Thomas, Eric T. Red, for holding down the chat, for moderating comments. Be sure to watch Sabby Sabs, which he produces. And we're going to be back next week. It's October 7th, 2025. They are not invincible, and they can't kill us all. I'm going to go listen to some Burning Spear now. Peace.
Peace.